This government meeting is brought to you by Eastworks and our local cable subscribers.
Okay, everybody, I'm calling to order the meeting of the Southampton Cost Efficiencies Committee for August 31st at around 3:05 in the afternoon. And we have most of our members here. Hopefully we'll have one or two more coming in. I know Eliza won't be here, given that it's the first day of school. She warned me that she definitely couldn't be here, and that's totally understandable. But hopefully maybe Ian will join us or Bob.
Okay.
So we have nobody around for open time for the public than what I could see. What I would like to do is just to share my screen, and we'll bring up the minutes from the last meeting so that we can take a look at them, and this will kind of serve maybe as a little intro to Ira, one of our guests this afternoon, to give him a clue about what we've been trying to work on here.
Ian's signing in now.
Oh, great. Okay, perfect. I will keep an eye out for him. Hopefully I can do that without, should be able to see him coming in. I didn't. Okay. So, alrighty. So I will just scroll down a little bit on the minutes. So, very good. So Ira, just so you know, this committee is an ad hoc committee that really got itself organized probably about in January. And we've got folks from the school, our town accountant, our town administrator, a couple of us from select board, someone representing the public at large, and our police chief is here, and we have our Janet, I guess you're representing Council on Aging and so forth. We have a cluster of groups that we're trying to represent everybody at town hall. So we had we would have a huge committee if we had everybody. So we kind of put people in clusters. So there was like a town clerk, assessors, building commissioner group, and they had to select their own representative to the committee. And so that's where we've kind of come up with this grouping of 9 people. And we've been trying to look at ways to both improve our efficiencies in town in terms of the services we deliver, but also looking at ways to stretch our costs, to manage our costs and generate more revenue if we can, or change services, etc., whatever we want to do to try and consolidate and be a more financially stable town that we don't have to constantly worry about, picking nickels and dimes for our budget every time we go to the budget season. So this is kind of where we are. And we've gone through a process here, and this kind of gives you some of the ideas, and I'll just keep it up for a minute so others that may not have looked at the minutes from last time can look. But we've been looking at things like shared online permitting, using some different software that may help us improve our efficiencies to the residents, as well as looking at a possible new financial software package. We are doing a lot of things very manually, and many hands touching the same piece of paper multiple times. So Ed has been investigating that along with Bradley and our town treasurer, and looking into possibilities there to improve some of those services. We've looked at also doing some consolidation of contracts with the photocopiers and the printers to get a better deal on town maintenance costs on those. And then looking at some shared tie-in.
Hi, how are you?
Good, just sharing
Sorry.
the minutes here.
Yep.
That's okay. Shared equipment maintenance contracts for HVAC and Norris and the town hall, trying to look at our, again, possibility of combining forces with one vendor and getting a better deal, a bit of a reduction discount on our costs. And then, yes.
Chris, sorry. So I did, Eric called me. He was having trouble getting in with the link, so I sent him the one that I used. So I don't know if he's in your waiting room or not.
Don't see him yet.
No.
I'm here. Can somebody see me?
Yeah, he's right
Oh, he
there.
is there.
Oh,
Yep,
there he
he's
is.
there. Okay, good. Thanks.
Yeah, that
Yeah, I
Eric
thought I
guy
let
is here. So
Okay, great. Good. Just going through this recap, just trying to bring Ira a little bit up to speed. I know you had a little bit of background, Eric, on what we were doing here as a
okay, keep
committee.
going.
Yep. So basically, we've also been looking at just simpler things like central purchasing of supplies, trying to identify, you know, common vendors so that every department head isn't going out getting, you know, their separate vendor, but trying to make that a more efficient system as well. So we've kind of done all that.
You're getting
and
interference from somewhere.
yeah, we've got a background noise somewhere. I'm not sure where, but
It's coming from Ed.
okay. Anyway, so this was our meeting minutes from last time, and we thought that our next foray into what we were trying to do, we've made some progress here, but what we wanted to do was to also take a look at any kind of regionalization possibilities. And I know we had Eric on, probably 2-3 months ago now, to have a brief intro on this, and he was double booked that day, and we didn't have a long conversation. So that's why we kind of invited you all back today. So this was basically the minutes of the last meeting. If anybody has any comments, let me know, or if not, I'll take a motion to approve. One of the things I will mention, just so you guys might have heard this, the assessors have done something different, which was to subscribe to a flyover service, which will hopefully allow them to get a better handle in terms of what kinds of things needs to be put on the on their list in terms of billing and so forth for structures that may have been added that may or may not have been visible through the building commissioner or whatever else. So we've tried to look at various ways within town hall that we can do things a little bit better. So this is where we are. And any comments or questions? If not, could I have a motion to approve?
So moved to approve.
Second.
All right. All those in favor?
Kane, I.
Okay. John?
Lumber eye.
I got Ian. Okay, good. Fowles eye. Okay.
Bradley.
Okay. All right. Let's call them approved. I think one thing while I have them up for a minute, I know, Ed, would you just give us a mini update just while we're on the same topic here? I know you've finished, have you, with all your modules with Springbook? Is that correct, to have them do a demonstration for you all on the financial software?
We're through that process with both Springbrook and oh God, I was just about to say, yeah, I was about to say the website company's name, Vadar.
Yep.
So
Okay.
now we will be following up with their references and talking to the communities that utilize them.
Okay. And looks like from our notes from last time, there was a little bit of a drawback on one, in that they don't have, Vadar doesn't have the actual HR package. Is that right?
That is correct.
Yeah. So that would be a separate thing altogether. So
yeah, we would have to go out and basically partner with someone such as like Harper's for a payroll service to go along with that.
yeah. Okay. And then on the opposite side of that, Springbook does have a utility billing module, which we are not currently using. So that might improve some efficiencies too. So
well, they both have utility
okay.
billing.
Okay.
So that was one of the thought processes going into this, is would that be if the water department, since they pay for it, would be amendable to this, would that be another cost savings or time efficiency measure by utilizing the same utility billing that our financial software package is, rather than having to import something in and then not getting the reports out of that we quite automatically get from using the same system.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So anyway, we're making progress on that. And once we get some references checked and some ideas of pricing, then we'll bring it back around just to see what this is. But hopefully this will both be, I would think, certainly more time efficient in terms of the use of our staff time in town hall, as well as an easier access for the residents when they need to have the ability to pay bills online, etc. And hopefully the cost will be something that we can figure out how to manage. But that's where we're heading, in that direction. And I guess one, Ed, I'd like you just to, because we chatted about it briefly, was the shared equipment maintenance contracts for the HVAC and the boilers. We were trying to consolidate Town Hall, Norris, and the police department in one contract to have a decent price and maybe a discount on the maintenance contract?
That would be correct. And I reached out, and actually it was Eliza that had, brought that up originally, that, she'd been told that there might be a 7 or 8% savings there on service calls if we align them all. And the police department currently doesn't have an annual maintenance contract. So I reached out to BG Mechanical, and they actually they sent back a shall we say a joint contract which had savings which combined the town hall and the police department. It did not also align or contain the Norris School. So I reached back out to them and asked why, because that's how we had gotten into this conversation. And the response I got was that Norris School didn't want to spend about more than $10,000 on the annual service contract, and I don't know why. That could be a procurement question, that they just want to keep it under 10,000 so they don't have to go out and get quotes from different companies. But she was telling me that Norris School had also removed the filter replacements from that annual service contract to make sure that it was below $10,000, and those are done separately. And she actually said that there were some issues with getting the approvals for that, of getting the filters and getting them done when they're supposed to be done. But that's another story. So she did say that, they had worked with the school so much on that contract that there really wasn't there was very little profit in it. And under its, shall we say, the way it's currently done, aligning it with either town hall or the police department would not have any further savings for the school end of things. So I'm actually going to have to follow up and find out, okay, what's actually going on with that annual service agreement, and why have they done what they've done? Is it a procurement issue, or is there some other reason to move any further forward in that?
Okay, all right. Well, that's good to know anyway. And Eliza couldn't be here today, and I don't know whether she might have had the answer on that. John, I don't know. Would you have any inkling on that at all from procurement side of things for the school, or?
No, I know the history as to why it's 2 different contracts, but it's not procurement related.
Okay. Okay, well, we'll keep exploring that. I think if, to the extent that it would make sense to consolidate them all and have a bit of savings, I think that's where we would still like to go. But if we can only get 2 out of 3, maybe that's the best we can do. So anyway, guys, that's where we are. What I had said earlier is I do want to make a presentation to select board at some point, and it'll probably be, at this point, it may be the last meeting of September by the time we get all the facts and figures in place. But just to let them know what we're doing, and it may be time also for them to take a look at the charge for the committee and whether they want to reappoint us or not as an ad hoc committee. But we have today, I think, just to move into our main business, we have, and thanks for coming, both Eric Weiss and Ira Brzezinski from the PVPC to try to give us some clues about ideas for regionalization. I'd given them an idea of these challenges that we were facing, and I know with their broad overview and work with many towns in the valley, that they've got a better perspective in terms of who's struggling to do what in terms of personnel and trying to fill vacancies. And a lot of the positions that we have open are going to be part-time positions, and sometimes there may be somebody else is a part-timer in another town that would be willing to take on a second level of duties, or maybe not. But I think we're open to hearing the kinds of things that towns are doing. We've heard a bit about the police sharing of I think it's Blandford and Chester. That one seems to be in the news fairly, so we kind of know that one a little bit. But there may be other ones. The ones I mentioned as terms of our sort of current part-time vacancies would be an assistant accountant, conservation agent, We have a full-time opening for a highway mechanic. Who's the other one I mentioned? There's somebody else, but anyway, we've got a couple of those that are on the docket for, trying to fill in the holes to provide the services we need to do for the town residents. So I'd like to kind of turn it over to you guys and just share what's been going on. We, obviously, to do anything that makes any sense. I know Ed had taken a look at Franklin County Council of Governments at one point in time, but it's really not practical to try and share services from Greenfield necessarily down with us. So, neighboring West Hampton, Huntington, Montgomery probably makes a lot of sense. But given that we're part of the Hampshire Regional School District too, the question had come up, is there anything that we could do within our 5-town school district that would make sense for trying to, share services? And maybe we have services that we could offer to another town that therefore we could be the beneficiary in terms of revenue or whatever. Oh, the other one open was the health agent is now open. That was the other one. So let me stop talking and turn it over to you guys for anything you'd like to share with us and just get us thinking along the path of regionalization. I think we're all kind of struggling with it and probably not very different from many other small towns that are never going to have all the resources to do full-time personnel for everything we need. So I'll turn it over to you.
You did such a good job. I'm not sure I know what to add. So we'll do what we can. But first of all, I want to applaud the towns. First, the steps you've already taken to look at consolidation and contracts and other things, because all of that is critical to the operating budget of the community. As far as PVPC goes, we're working on a couple of initiatives. We've worked on a few past initiatives, so I'll do what I can to share that. Ira right now is working on a shared conservation agent over in the Longmeadow side of the world. And I'll let him talk about that in a minute. We did create a shared health arrangement for towns over there as well, Longmeadow and Wilbraham and Hamden over there. So that has worked out very well. You know about the shared police arrangement in Chester and Blandford. We also tangentially assisted with a similar arrangement for Montgomery and Russell. Russell now patrols Montgomery's roads, but it really wasn't a really formal or rigid arrangement. Montgomery didn't have a police force, so it was a different kind of animal in terms of that. We have looked at shared fire services for a number of the towns, and I would like to say we've had limited success, and that was like Cummington, Goshen, Worthington, Plainfield, up that way. And it was, we've gotten the chiefs in that area to talk to each other a whole lot more, not just in terms of mutual aid, but also in terms of shared trainings and services like that. In terms of the actual sharing of equipment and facilities, it has not reached that stage yet, and it's probably a while till it gets there. But the recognition of shared services in terms of police and fire is definitely out there amongst many small communities. You mentioned the health agent one, the Foothills Health District. That's been a long time success story in terms of shared services. A couple of things that we've been working on. We have the final touches on the shared HR report, which Southampton was part of, and we're almost there on it. It took a little longer than we expected, just like everything else in this darn pandemic did. And we're doing our best getting that done, and we'll be able to share that with the town very shortly. And that was with a number of communities as well. And then we had our own shared treasurer's services. We worked with Eric Kinshirf, and honestly, the program was so successful, it didn't need us anymore. People could contract directly with Kinshirf because he's done such a great job. They didn't need us to pay us to be the middleman. He's very reliable, very conscientious. The towns he's worked with, he's done a great job with. So we did not have to be involved with that. We are always looking for ways to work. If an idea comes up from this, that we can use DLTA monies, that's district local technical assistance monies, to begin to explore something with Southampton partnering with a couple other towns. That cycle is coming up pretty soon. So I would be more than interested in doing that on the town's behalf, that's for sure. I'm trying to think of the other areas. We've done some streamlined permitting on an individual town basis, but not with a shared arrangement. That has been brought up that maybe towns could share permitting services. The real challenge with that is the whole uniqueness of each town's website and everything else that goes with it. It's not really a cross-platform arrangement that will work out to your benefit. But the idea of streamlining permitting in an electronic manner is real. And I heard you just talking about it. Let's see. I think probably the last place I would want to go before I let Ira talk about his experience with the shared conservation. We're also doing a shared water system operator in Chester and Blandford. And I would say that has had limited success right now. We're moving ahead with it. It's not comprehensive. We would have liked to have been more comprehensive. But the idea of sharing those types of services where you really need some professional skills involved, like police, like fire, water system operators have a whole array of things that they need to follow. It's a technically rigid in terms of what is required. So there's that piece. There has been a number of towns who have asked us about things like town accountant, town clerk, et cetera, because again, you might have somebody working part-time in those roles. And we're interested, it's not really, in those particular cases, it's not so much a shared arrangement because there aren't a lot of common duties, but it's one person working in more than one town. And then you get some synergies and efficiencies in terms of trainings and things like that work out. So we as an organization are very open to exploring more regional services with the communities. We are very aware of what FERGOG has done, and they've done a great job with their programs. They're a sister organization that's done great work. We also know that some of this is fallout from the demise of the Hampshire Council of Governments. They did offer some services and now those are gone. We're doing our best to step into the void in a very deliberate way and not overpromise anything. And so we recognize Southampton with its 6,000 plus people is larger than some of the tiny towns, but not as big as other towns. So you're kind of right in between in terms of your need for services and what it requires, which is both a blessing and a curse, as you're well aware of in terms of your size. Obviously, we have worked in the past with Hampshire Regional on some stuff. They chose that their HR needs should not be part of the HR study, that they were so much different in terms of their structure than the way the towns work, that just wasn't going to work for them. So that's where we are in terms of what we're doing. And I just want to reemphasize before Ira talks for a minute that if this committee comes up with something they really want me to explore, I can make the DLTA arrangement happen to help pursue that and help make that go in a certain direction, or if it's a couple positions or something like that. So our flexibility is also very much focused on working ahead with you as much as it is talking to you today. So Ira, if you could share a little bit about the Shared Conservation Commission. I know that's one that's come up with a number of towns.
Sure. Just before I do that, just to give you 30 seconds of my background, I spent about 35 years in business after having left the teaching profession, retired in 2018 from that. Over the same period of time, I've been a volunteer, select board member, school committee member, finance committee, pretty much all of it in South Hadley for decades. So I understand what you're going through. Shared resources, regionalization is something that's near and dear to my heart. And it's something that in terms of municipal government gets me more excited than anything. With regard to the two projects that I've been working on for the last few months, Eric mentioned them. The shared conservation agent is moving ahead very nicely, and I believe it'll go public and go to the town meetings later this fall for funding and approval. It's the towns of Longmeadow, Hamden, and Munson. And it's really quite simple. It's going to be sharing one full-time conservation agent between the three towns. None of the three towns historically have had a professional person in that position until recently when Munson hired a part-time, but as far as benefits are concerned, full-time, so 24 hours a week to fill that role. And I've been working with the 3 town administrators and the assistant in Long Meadow. We've been meeting monthly, and it's been going quite well. So, we're kind of we've got a job description in place, an org chart that's been approved by them. And I think and a draft of an MOU. So I'm fairly confident that following our September meeting, they'll be ready to bring that forward to their select boards, conservation commissions, and ultimately to their town meetings. In Blandford and Chester with the shared water operator, I guess I'm a little more positive about it than Eric. Eric you have your hand up?
Yeah, that's okay. You finish and then I'll go.
Okay. So originally, and this is also a DLTA project, originally it was specifically shared water operator. And after a few meetings, it became certainly obvious to me, and it became obvious, I think, to others that are on that committee between the 2 towns, that really there's an awful lot of crossover in terms of responsibilities between water operator and water superintendent. And so we were kind of going down the road of creating a job description for a water superintendent / operator and an assistant. Without getting into any of the details, we kind of took a step back, and now it's back to just being strictly the water operator. We had actually a very productive meeting last week, I think it was. And so we've got some draft job descriptions for that. I think I'm hopeful, let's put it that way, that not on the same timetable as the conservation agent, but shortly thereafter, we're going to be able to put that together to come up with some full-time positions that pay what they need to pay to be competitive, that are hopefully within, work within the budget constraints that every small town has. So those are those 2 projects. I just want to add a couple of quick things. In my view, and some of you may know that I worked for about 6 months as the treasurer for the town of West Hampton last year. So I am familiar with the area and with the regional schools. And I was actually also the town administrator for Goshen back in 2018 into 2019 for about 9 months. In my view, it looks to me that the towns work really quite well together more often than not. And it seems like a wonderful opportunity to have more conversations about sharing services other than educating children, which is obviously very important, but there's so much more that's going on. So I would really strongly encourage that. And I guess the other thing I would just say is that in my experience, both here where I live in South Hadley and my volunteer roles, as well as in my briefer stints being paid to do this stuff, I think that when the parties understand and agree that they have far more in common than separates them, it becomes so much easier to figure out how to make things happen, as opposed to when attitudes sort of lean toward what makes us different and why won't it work. So, glass half full, glass half empty, and it's all about attitudes. For the most part, I think that none of these things in terms of shared services, shared positions, are intrinsically difficult to do. It's all about, how the various parties feel about it and how much they really do believe that we're kind of all in this together and everybody's dealing with almost all the same issues. I'll leave it at that.
For the record, we actually do pay him, but that's beside the point. You did, you put me, but anyway, what I was really gonna say is exactly what you said, but slightly differently, which is that the regionalization projects and efforts that have been successful have been because the towns want to regionalize whatever that service is. So if there is resistance, that makes the battle that much harder, as you all know. But if there is synergy between 2 towns, 3 towns, 4 towns on whatever the effort will be, whatever the position will be, then you then have that sort of grassroots supports that's necessary to carry it over some of those political hurdles that it will be facing, of course, because the biggest challenge that regionalization sees is, but we've always done it that way. So we should be able to, but I don't really need a really good crystal ball to know that, this is not something that is a shock to any of you, or you wouldn't be sitting here, that small town government cannot afford to to ignore regionalization opportunities because of the costs that are involved. You have limited budgets, limited resources, and costs are going up. And, I heard a statistic once that I think I've got kind of in the back of my mind. In Massachusetts, we have 371 towns and cities. And in the entire state of California, they have something like 492, which is, I don't know how many times bigger than Massachusetts, but we have many, many small towns, which is great. I lived in Monterey. I've lived in the Berkshires. I live in Belchertown. It's all great. I mean, I love that part of it, but the fiscal challenge is real. There's no doubt about how real that fiscal challenge is. So we're open to your suggestions. We're open to pursue things to work with the town. That is part of the role of my position. I am the Director of Economic and Municipal Collaboration, and you can arrange those words however you want to know that those are the types of things I work on. So
Very good. Well, I'd like to open it up for some questions from the folks, and let me just start with one. Just taking a look at the tri-town arrangement, for example, for the conservation agent. How will that end up being funded? Is that goes back to town meeting, I assume, and each town will have a portion of that individual's salary to be paid out? And is that done based on what size of town? How does that, is it just divided simply by 3, or is it somehow a formula of some sort? And how do you assure that that person gets paid on time when you've got 3 towns trying to chip into the bill?
So that's, some of those questions are still being worked out, particularly the one about what are the metrics for how to apportion the cost. So yes, salary and benefits will be calculated. And then there'll be a determination made. We've got a tentative idea of how that's going to go during the first year of an agreement. And I realize this is a public meeting and it's being recorded, and all of the meetings we've had thus far have been private meetings, just with the town administrators. But there's nothing that's, I think that's too confidential here. And we had a conversation about, various ways that it could be decided. Population, it's conservation, so it could have something to do with amount of wetlands or total square miles or linear miles of roads. We talked about various ways of looking at it, and we've come up with a tentative breakdown, which I won't make that public right now.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, the plan is for Munson to be the host community for this particular arrangement, since the individual that is currently the only one of the 3 towns that has a conservation agent at this point is, they're happy with, and presumably, that individual will be offered the full-time position. And then it'll be a simple matter of the town of Munson billing the other 2 communities each month for their portion of the costs.
Got it. Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, Eric.
just one thing to add, as we go through this process, we have really strong experience with developing municipal MOUs, buying between communities. So we have a number of strong templates that we can use. And we also know that it's a process that you have to go through to negotiate that all out, that it's not a done deal. Everybody needs to make sure they're comfortable with the arrangement and the way it's structured. And an MOU, a well-structured MOU is a really good way to do that.
Yep, okay.
I'll add, Chris, if I could, I'll add just one more thing.
Mhm.
We also talked about kind of different models of everything from strictly on an hourly basis where the conservation agent would submit their hours and they would be assigned every single pay period to whichever towns they happen to be working with, to a flat amount per town of, for the year and divided out by the pay period, to something in between. And what's been settled on at this point is to do the work up front to the best of each town's ability, determine what their needs are, to pay the individual based on that determination, but then particularly during the first year of the agreement, to have a quarterly or more review of how that's going, and language in the agreement to be able to adjust that if it needs to be done.
Okay, great. No, that sounds like you're making some interesting progress there. Good. Okay. How about some questions from my committee folks? Anything offhand? Yeah, Janet?
A couple of questions. The difference between cost efficiency wise between outsourcing a function and shared services. Is there benefit one way or the other, or are they
Sure.
typically shared, or?
And you're going to hate my answer. And the answer is it depends. And,
I hate that answer. No.
which is, for example, in the case of the treasurer services, because we found such a high caliber company to do the work, they didn't need a layer of government in between them and Eric Kinshirf. He's provided, he's got a proven track record, everything worked out. For something more traditional like the conservation commissioner or shared water operator, or even health agent, it's really an agreement between the towns. It's not something that you can find somebody to farm out to. So for example, on the HR services piece that we're looking at, that more than likely will be farmed out in some way, means, or form when the day finally comes, because that's not one of those natural things that towns have a lot of background and experience where they can do that. So it really, really depends on the service you're describing and the shared arrangement that you're trying to put together. And then the other piece that I'm always very careful with is, yes, there are cost savings, but whether there's an immediate impact to a reduction in town budget numbers, that is a really hard sell. And it's always dangerous to say, oh yeah, you're going to save $10,000 a year. What you are going to save is, over the long term, substantial costs. But in terms of year one or year two, that's a really tough sell. And it's one that you can get caught on very easily. But it does, without a doubt, with all these consolidations of things that you're talking about, you can take the long-term costs and certainly project it out in a way that is beneficial to the community.
Yeah, okay. Ed, yep. You're muted, no? Or John? Somebody, whoever's muted there.
I think Ira put his hand up.
Oh, sorry. Ira, sorry, go ahead.
Okay, just to add on to what Eric was just saying, I think it's really helpful to think about shared services in terms of increased value, as opposed to only cost savings or only improvements in service. So you can save money and reduce service. You can improve service at a substantial cost. But when you hit the sweet spot where you're delivering services the way they should be, hopefully better than they are in many instances, and you're able to do it cost efficiently, however you want to look at that, then that equates to value. And I think that's important to keep in mind. It's not always what's cheapest that works best.
Yeah, good point.
That makes sense.
Yeah, good. Okay.
You did mention health agent. Yeah, there's situations where there have been shared services for health agents in communities that were successful.
Yeah, well, there's the longstanding Foothills arrangement, which is near you. And then we have helped create one in the Long Meadow region, Long Meadow, Hamden, et cetera, over there. That's working out very well for those towns. So it's the same thing, though. There has to be the momentum at the municipal level to say, yes, we want to share services. And then it becomes more process oriented in terms of what you're trying to do, than salesman oriented in terms of what you're trying to do. So I'm a big fan of it in a real way. I think that health services is one that lends itself very nicely to shared arrangements, because it's such a specialized skill set, and you certainly need a critical mass of population to make it worth the person's while at a full-time level. Whereas if you can share between a couple, 3 towns, you can make something work.
Mhm.
And the other thing that I really try to work on with the towns, as we move through time, I don't think we should be limited by county boundaries either. If there's a reason to step over a county line to share a service, yeah, I think it should be done. I have no problem with that.
Okay. And remind us of the towns that are part of the Foothills Agreement?
That's Williamsburg, Goshen, was Ashfield, and then there's one other, West Hampton, I believe is the other one,
Chesterfield.
and Chesterfield. Thank you.
Okay.
And they've done historically, they've done a good job. I don't know the details, but they've been in business for a while and they've done a pretty good job of it overall.
When I was working in Goshen about 4 years ago, I had some involvement with them. It was my first and only opportunity to work with them, and I was quite impressed.
I don't know if they're looking for another member community or anything else, but it's worth opening up a conversation with their chair. And I believe that's Tom in West Hampton. Tom, I just can't pull his last name out of my head. But I believe that's who it is.
I know that when I was in Goshen, the subject of Chester rejoining Foothills came up, and they had been in Foothills. They left Foothills, and I don't remember any of the details.
Chesterfield, you mean?
No, Chester.
Chester was part of Foothills?
I believe so, unless I'm thinking of a different regional organization.
No, I think it's something different.
Uh,
But anyway, it doesn't matter.
In any event, yeah. There was a discussion about adding another community back in. I don't think it ultimately happened, but they are open, or
So-
we're open to that.
Who is the current host community for the health agent then?
I believe it's Williamsburg, but
Okay.
For Foothills?
yeah, it's Williamsburg. I'm looking it up on my phone right now.
Okay.
Chris, I don't know who represents the Board of Health in our mini groups. Do you? I don't remember who.
It would be
Oh, there
me.
we go.
Oh, it's
yeah.
Ian? Okay.
Yeah.
Just so you know, the board members listed here are Goshen, Williamsburg, Whately, West Hampton, and West Hampton. So that's who's part of it now.
Okay.
Eric, what's the official name of that entity? Foothills?
Foothills Health District.
Okay.
They have a decent website, so.
Eric, is Williamsburg the host community, or is that simply where the office is? Because I know the Foothills office is there.
I don't know if they're officially the host community or how they do that. I know that the health officer, the health agent spends time in each town.
Yes.
So I know that part's true as well. And they have a small desk arrangement at each town hall for them to be there to provide services. So, but I don't know if they went the lead. I don't remember if they went the lead town model with Williamsburg being the lead or not.
Okay.
Oh, that's the other thing that needs to be brought up here. More often than not, in these shared arrangements, there's a lead town, a lead community, so that all the money can be handled by one community and you're not trying to split up monies all the time and and figure that part out, and salaries and benefits and all that.
Mhm.
So that one town is assessed and they send that check to the other town, and that's a way to cover all of the costs that come with it.
Okay.
Yeah, I think the, one of the other problems that we face, and you guys touched on it earlier a little bit, is just trying to break down the barriers of even getting people to entertain the ideas to start
Yep.
with, right? Because
Yep.
it's, just name the department and, there'll be a reason not to pursue it. So I kind of look at it from the other direction. It's like, okay, well, that's the roadblock that we have to get over first before we even think about bringing in other towns. So how do we get the data together to determine whether or not, is it even feasible? Pick on any department, whether it's police or DPW or highway. Does it make sense for our highway department to join with an abutting highway department and consolidate forces? Montgomery's right there, right, that we border. How would we go through the data to then go to the department heads and the powers that be to say, here's the data, it makes sense to come together.
But
I don't,
the answer is, I tried to touch on a little bit earlier, John, and by the way, it's good to see you. The process has to be done with interest at the grassroots level in both communities. Let's say you're combining with Montgomery, that a member of their select board or whatever had to have a good solid communication with your select board saying, look, we're interested, here's an opportunity, let's see what we can do to pursue this. And that's where you have to build the momentum from there to make it possible. If it's just one town sort of saying, hey, we'll make sure we're looking for a partner on this, you may or may not. But if two towns are looking for have a similar idea, it's sort of at the same moment, that's usually where it comes from. Montgomery's a really interesting example because they provide such limited services as such a small town. On the other hand, the town is well situated in terms of where it is, between you and Westfield and everything else. So, would it make more sense for you to partner with West Hampton, for example, on some of those things you're talking about? So all of those things are.
If we partnered with West Hampton, that would solve our public safety complex issue, right? We just move up there.
Ian.
And then, well, as Ian knows, then when you start talking about sharing police, it's then who's responsible for which roads at which time, and how do you do all your coverages and all those things. And Blandford and Chester were able to work that out. Now, fortunately for both of them, they were two very equivalently sized towns. There wasn't a significant difference in population. So the balance worked out very nicely for both towns. But there's always a possibility, as long as there's a willingness to look at it in a way that works for both communities.
I think it's very important right from the get-go to recognize human nature and to recognize that quite possibly a particular shared service that you might be looking at or thinking about is going to involve existing staff. And people quite naturally are concerned about their jobs, their livelihood. They want to know what's in it for them. How is it going to work for them? We can all think about, what's in the best interests of the community or the communities or the region. But every individual just naturally is going to think about how is it going to affect them. And I think anytime that you are seriously considering sharing a service and you are able to clearly get the message across that this does not mean job reduction. Nobody that's in an existing position is going to quote lose as a result of this. You can head off that sort of concern and that kind of just vibe that can easily get filtered into discussions and send things off in the wrong direction. It's not always possible, but very often it is.
Yeah.
Well, even if you can't accommodate that, you at least have to be aware of it and acknowledge that that is meaningful to the person who is being affected, immediately, and,
Yes.
at least let them realize that you're not, unaware of that situation.
Yeah.
Have you had any, I don't know, discussions with say the Huntingtons or the West Hamptons about the needs that they have? Have they reached out to you for any kind of thing like this, or?
It's on a limited basis, yes, but not on a wide basis. But you have brought up a couple of really good ideas here today, and I wrote them down, which is, one is either a shared services roundtable, which coming out of the pandemic is probably a good thing. And the other one is a Hampshire County roundtable as well, to identify needs. But I'm starting to like more and more this idea of a shared services roundtable, so we can share successes and challenges and opportunity that would come from that.
And it might also be, is there a place somewhere where communities can say, you know what, we're thinking about this, we're thinking these are things that we might be able to share with other communities,
Yep.
just to kind of put them out there.
Yep.
And another select board or town administrator may see
Yep.
it and pick up on the idea.
Yeah.
I think that's a great idea.
I also think that, from my point of view, at least, we've gone halfway on regionalizing the school system. Just regionalize the elementary, put it all together under one. I mean, you'd immediately eliminate 20 elected officials, and who's not in favor of that? I mean,
Yeah.
we agree on everything at the middle school and up, but the elementary schools, we still want to keep all those separate. And every community is costing us money because we're ineligible for transportation reimbursement.
Yeah.
you know?
And provincialism runs deep in New England, so we need to,
Yeah.
yeah.
Mhm.
But I agree with John. I think there's opportunity at multiple levels, and it's really getting the right people at the table at the right time, so.
Mhm. Mhm. Well, and maybe just to say that, with the, the job openings that we have, at least to send them also to you guys, so that maybe you've got a bulletin board or in the newsletter that you put out or something,
Yep.
that those can be shared more broadly with the towns around, and maybe get other people thinking too of how might we try and combine forces here somehow.
Mhm.
I mean, another touchy subject is the libraries, right? But we have a unique opportunity right now with our library director announcing her retirement.
Mhm.
Is this the opportunity to see, hey, are there one or two abutting libraries that perhaps we consolidate the library director altogether to oversee it, to enhance services to all three libraries?
And the
It
interesting
only comes
thing,
along so many times.
well, and one of the interesting things, and I learned this a while back about libraries, is in some towns, they're a direct function of town government. And in some towns, they're a derivative of town government and sort of separately operated, even though they get some money from the town. So it's like there's almost like a trust setup that they operate under,
Yeah.
or something like that. So but I do think that that's another example of a highly skilled position, that if you have a small town that has a library with limited number of hours, that there's a way to make things work in a cooperative way. I agree with you there.
Yeah, our library operates under the board of trustees, the library trustees. Yeah.
Have you folks looked at the community compact best practices page on the state's website?
Yeah, a little bit way back when. We've done a little bit with IT, but not much beyond that, right, Ed? I think.
So there's a a best practices page, and one of the categories is regionalization, shared services, best practice. I'm looking at it right now, and there's a fairly lengthy list of a variety of different community compact projects that were approved, funded, and are presumably working well.
Mhm.
Small towns and large.
Maybe, I'm just brainstorming here with you, Chris, right now with all of you. Maybe the next DLTA is broader than just a single position. It's looking at potential shared services on a more global scale. Not, regional scale, whatever you want to call it.
Uh-huh.
So anyway, I'm just throwing out ideas.
Yeah, no, that's great. I mean, that's where we know that we've got this issue in front of us, but trying to figure out where to really start and try to make some headway on it has been the challenge to, we don't necessarily want to go out and say, hey, here we are, don't you need our services? That may not work, right? So, we've got a pretty healthy fire department, for example, and an EMS force and so forth. I mean, we probably have more resources than many of the surrounding towns, but again, you don't want to necessarily, shove it down somebody's throat when they're not ready for it too. So that's not going to be an acceptable challenge probably, but.
Cool.
Okay. Does anybody else have any other thoughts on this? This may get us going. I don't know, Ed, anything offhand?
No, I think you've covered everything that I can think about.
Bradley, anything? No? Okay. Good. Well, I think, this at least gets us an idea of sort of what might be out there or how we might approach it. But it would be good, I think, if we had, if there is something organized where you've got some of your regional partners already in existence, if you had a meeting with them, like you mentioned, sort of a roundtable, if you have a meeting or something with them, maybe invite us and, we'd at least listen in and hear what the pros and cons are. I mean, sometimes, like you say, it sounds like it's a great idea to try and pursue this and look at it from a cost efficiency and cost savings point of view, but it may not be the right fit. I mean, it could be, it could present different challenges that you don't even think about, all those unintended consequences, right? So I think to learn a bit more about what's worked and what hasn't worked would have been the pitfalls of any kind of regional agreement.
Yep.
I know we had one at one point in time before I came on the board. Was a conservation agent with East Hampton for a while,
Right.
and that was a part-time shared thing, and it lasted, I think, the first year, and then went belly up, partly because I think the commitment to funding wasn't long-standing,
I heard
among other
that.
things.
I heard that.
So we've tried it a little bit, but maybe got our feet burned a little bit and have been very reluctant to try looking at it again. And so now I think is our time to try and see if we can make some headway on it. That's the intent anyway. So
Chris, I'll just add one other quick little thing to Janet's question earlier about the pluses and minuses of contracting versus hiring employees. And two things I would just comment about. One is that one of the benefits of contracting is flexibility. When you contract, unless you're into a very long-term contract, but you can often fill a position for just a period of time and then have no further commitment. The other is to look at, financially, one of the big issues with municipal employment is the retirement system. And, you're basically looking at 30% of whatever somebody's being paid if they're full-time, if they're more than 20 hours, that's going strictly to the retirement system, forgetting about health insurance and all the rest. So oftentimes the private sector can deliver, I shouldn't say oftentimes, sometimes the private sector can deliver on a more cost-effective basis, just based on what public benefits are versus private.
yeah. Okay, well, if nothing else, I just want to thank Eric and Ira for joining us. We appreciate your time, and we'll be back in touch. But also, if you would, to the extent that you can share any resources and any, any possible joint job descriptions of shared services when you get to that point, whether it's the water or the conservation people or anybody else, we'd be glad to take a look at those and understand how that might work or might not work for our situation. But I think the more we can keep the dialogue going and share information, that would be great. So
Well, you always keep me thinking, Chris, and I appreciate that.
very good.
Always got to keep you on your toes, Eric.
That's right, that's right.
Yeah. Well, we're gonna hold your feet to the fire until we get that HR thing. That's for sure.
Yeah, we're almost there. We're almost there.
Every
Very
time
good.
I open my mouth, I put Eric on his toes.
There you go. That's good. All right, we'll let you guys go if you'd like to, and we'll just have a couple more minutes on the meeting here. So thanks very much for joining
Good
us.
seeing you, Eric. Good seeing you, Ira. Take care.
All right,
Been a
take
pleasure.
care. Thank you. Okay, guys. Well, at least we had a longer conversation than the first time. I think we got a lot more out of it than what we had heard the first time too. From my point of view, at least, I think I learned a few more things. So hope you feel the same way. I'm not sure that we have any clearer idea of what to do next, but maybe it gets us some food for thought. So any comments that anybody would like to make after this? And So
I guess we have to reach out, right? We have to reach out to other communities.
I
you know?
think so. I mean,
Yeah.
I think
That's
we
the
have to
first
know
step.
what's happening. So between whether it's the Foothills crew or, what's going on in Montgomery. I mean, I've never known that there's that much of a strong set of services in Montgomery from my knowledge. I know they do have a select board, but I don't even know that they do much with the Conservation Commission or some of the other services that we have, so, and again, their needs are probably very different than ours too. So, but yeah, I think the more we can try to reach out, people that we know of, I think would be great to do that. And if we have to have some, separate meetings, we can invite, a couple people to our meeting, or, just delegate one or two of us to go and meet with, a town administrator or a select board person or somebody from another town. I'm open to suggestions as to how we'd like to, proceed with that, and we can think about that and maybe, look at that over the next meeting of how we could take this into a next step. But yeah, I think we do need to reach out, and I think, to the extent we've got job descriptions for these openings that we have, I think, Ed, if we could just forward those on to Eric and Ira and have them post them somewhere at PVPC as well. I know they do put out a monthly newsletter up there. Maybe they could, make a note in that as well. That would be helpful, perhaps. Okay. All right. Well, how about, could we set a time for our next meeting? See where we need to go. I'm going to, based on the minutes that we had done, I'm going to, still try and fill out those little forms that I had developed, so we can show the sort of the process that we've gone through to select board and to the residents that listen to us on select board nights. So I'll be working on that over the next couple of weeks and get those done. And I may end up probably coming to Ed and Bradley to just get some facts and figures from the budget on some of those things, but we'll try and get those put together. What do you think in terms of a next meeting, guys? Up to you. We are Wednesday, the 31st. 3 weeks out would put us at the 21st of September.
I know I'll be away likely at training that day, so
Okay.
it wouldn't, September 21st wouldn't work for me, at least.
Okay, all right. Do we have a need to get together earlier than that? Again, I don't want us to spend time getting together when we don't have some real solid things to think about. So
Yeah, so
No.
earlier on, when we were still dealing with the budget, right, we had all that material about the ambulance service. And at that time, we were gonna wait until the budget went through before we started digging into the details and that. I mean, is that just, are we scrapping it, pushing it off?
no, we can
want to
go back
dive
to that. I
into
mean, we have the spreadsheet that I had started on that Bradley has filled in now in terms of, our budgeted amount and our actual expenditures over the 5-year history on all sorts of topics. And then we've got the budget spreadsheet that you had put forth that I think, Bradley, you probably still have to work at filling in. Is that right? That hasn't been completed yet in terms of those bigger budget items.
Yeah,
But the ambulance service, yeah,
This would have been, what's the call volume, what's the AAR
Right.
volume, things that, I mean, in all honesty, the first step is you have to have the buy-in of the fire chief,
right.
because he's got the keys to all that data. So,
Mhm.
I haven't spoken to John about this, and I know at the time it was initially brought up, I think we were just putting on hold until we finished our budget, the town's budget.
Right.
So again, if we don't have buy-in to start with, then we're not going to get anywhere with it. I just wondering if we're moving forward with it or not.
Yeah.
Or if anyone's talked to John.
Well, we haven't moved for it. We haven't had a chat with John just to sort of bring him up to speed in terms of talking about, what's the possibility of sharing ambulance services somehow, like some of the other towns have done. What would you recommend, Ian? John, maybe better than we do.
I would think that, if we have the discussion, it's important that we invite him in, so, he can we give him enough time to prepare, and it can't hurt, right? It's either going to, he'll provide us with data that suggests that wouldn't work, or he'll provide us with data that suggests that it may work.
Okay.
So I think as long as it's an open conversation with him,
Yeah, okay.
I don't really know exactly where he's at with it right now.
Yeah,
The levels of
Yep.
his calls for service, but I think, if we have that discussion, let's talk to him about it.
are you still in training on the 22nd? That would be a Thursday.
It's the annual chiefs training, so it's the 20th,
Okay.
21st and 22nd.
Yeah, okay. So maybe we'd have to jump into the next week, the 28th. Is that,
Yeah, Chris, and the other thing maybe would want to also, I mean, we talked about opportunities with timing. So we don't have a health agent. Our library director is
Resigning.
retiring.
retiring?
Maybe it's the time to have conversations with her before she leaves and her concept of a shared director. If we're going to do that with, John, I think it's important to get
Yeah.
feedback from the experts. Maybe somebody from the Board of Health could talk about the value. Is there value in looking at a shared resource for a health agent? I'm just, if we're going to do that with John as well, we talk about everything that
Right, okay.
as times change. I don't know what.
No, that's
everybody
that's a
thinks.
very, very valid point. That's a very valid point, I think. Yeah. What is Barbara's last day? What was her date of retirement? Do we know?
You're muted, Ed.
You're muted, Ed. Sorry.
The 15th,
Of September.
yes.
Oh, wow. Okay. Well, we could certainly try to have, a conversation with her
Right.
ahead of time. One or two of us could meet ahead of time with her, if that would be the desires of the board, and just get her input before she left. But then it might be good to have like the head of their board of trustees or somebody come to our meeting. And sort of, involve a meeting with Barbara and who's it? Jessica, I think Huffnagel, I think is
Just Jessica Huffnagel and
Right.
Jen Bree are the two co-chairs.
right. So maybe just see if we could get a mini meeting with them and just talk about the idea of, what next and what makes sense given their knowledge of the libraries around and their connections. I think that's a great idea, Janet. And then have them, whoever can come to our next meeting and kind of share that publicly with everybody. Would anybody like to volunteer? I'd be glad to start a meeting with Barbara, but anybody would like to join?
I'll be happy to.
Okay. Anybody else? No? Okay,
I'm happy to join in if you need another
okay,
years, depending on when it is.
sure. Okay, and then I guess Nicole's resignation is effective already tomorrow in terms of the health agent part.
I have a question on, I don't know that anybody knows the answer. I understand, Barbara, because it's retirement. Be nice if somebody did an exit interview. Is it too much work, not enough hours, just going in a different direction?
Granddaughter and let's just say Barbara is older than we think she is.
Well, no, Barbara, I understand. No,
Yeah.
Barbara, I get. I'm talking
Yeah.
about the health agent.
Yeah, just, shall we say, more demands in the family business.
Yeah, all right, so
I don't
that's good to
think-
know. That doesn't indicate that we're overwhelmed with the workload to the compensation level, right? It's not
Right,
like the
yeah.
person's leaving to go to another community.
Yeah, I don't
Yeah.
think, but was that really your question, John, or is it more, let's talk to us about your workload and talk to us about your position and help the Board of Health get a better idea of, is it situated right, or,
Right, now, I'm sorry
not
that.
why is she leaving so much as to tell us about your job and.
Right,
Yeah, that's a good thing. And how would we make that happen? Would that be having the Board of Health do that, having us invite her to talk to us about it? Or, she works under the Board of Health, really, not anybody else. So it's really their purview, right? Kate and Jerry.
yeah.
Well, it is until she separates.
Well,
It is until tomorrow.
well, that's true.
Chris, I think something that we really strongly should consider is, like Eric had said, you have to get buy-in by the communities, right? That's the
Right, right.
grassroots buy-in, I think he described it as.
Right.
You won't know that until we have discussions with these other communities.
Mhm.
So I think, my take is, we can talk about regionalizing certain services, but we can talk until we're blue if we know, if we don't have people that are willing to buy in, like, West Hampton or Montgomery or some of the smaller communities that he's talking about.
Right.
I wonder if we should have a meeting where we do have an invite, or we have some sort of conversation to say, maybe, West Hampton is in a very similar predicament. And they might be
Mhm.
like, yeah, this is something that we'd really be interested in.
Mhm.
Or some of these, another surrounding
Yeah.
community, whatever it may be. I'm just,
Yep.
I think that we really have to find out who is in similar positions as us, and that would be willing to share services.
Mhm.
It not to pile work up on top of you, Chris, but as chair of the select board, maybe you reach out to your counterpart, to the chair of West Hampton and the chair of Montgomery, and just say,
Right.
this is what we're going through. I just want to have a 5-minute phone call with them, what we're
Mhm.
going through in town, what we're thinking. Are you guys, similar experience? If so, do you think there might be any chance for us to get together and have a deeper conversation?
Sure. Okay. No, I could do that. So we could do what, West Hampton, what, Montgomery, Huntington? You want to do some of the other school
Sure.
district
I mean,
ones?
it's,
Like,
yeah, we start there at least.
Well,
Yeah.
yeah, start with 3, because you don't want to hit 10
Yeah.
and all 10 say, yeah, we want to do it.
right. Okay, I could reach out to those 3 and just have a conversation with them by phone or email or something, and then sort of see where they're at, and then whether it would make sense for them to, send someone to join us in a meeting and talking about more formally.
I know,
That would be a good idea.
speaking with Jen, I don't know if she's still in West Hampton as a treasurer, but, she's doing both already. So,
Mhm.
there may be more needs.
Yeah. Yep. Okay. All right. Well, let's start with that. But I think it wouldn't be a bad idea. Kind of tying it in a little bit to sort of an exit interview, like John was suggesting. But still trying to pursue the track to talk to Barbara and somebody from the board of trustees, and then if we can, grab Nicole at some point in time and maybe involve Kate as the chair of the Board of Health, and just have a chit chat with the 2 of them and just see that. But I'd like more than me. I'd like at least one other person to join me on these kinds of things.
Yeah, I'm happy to help with those. I just need to know a little bit
Sure.
in advance on
Timing.
what the date
Okay.
and time is.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's see if we can work on that over the next month, and then we'll aim for a meeting on the 28th. How's that? That was a Wednesday, I think, right? Yeah. 28th at 3:00. We'll kind of aim in that direction. All right. Good.
Okay.
All right. And then, we can maybe also just, alert John and tell him that we're thinking, we'd like to explore this a little bit, and it might not be for the end of September meeting, but, would you?
I can do that. I represent the
Yeah.
group, so I'll let them
Yeah.
know that discussions are being there's discussions about it, and that at some in the near future there'll
Yeah.
be an invite to have them discuss the services. And
Sure, that'd be great.
okay,
Great. Thanks, Ian. Yep.
Yep.
Okay, I think that's about it for today. So I'll take a motion to adjourn, and thank you all for coming. I really appreciate it, and glad we had our whole quorum at least present here. That was good. So thanks. Could I have a motion?
So moved.
All right. All those in favor?
Ian,
Aye.
All right. Bullseye. All right. Let us call it adjourned at around 4:18. So thanks very much,
Take care,
guys.
everybody.
You
Much
guys.
appreciated. Bye now.